Great civilizations like fertile soil cultivate magnificent myths that reflect a nation's unique worldview, its understanding of harmony, order, the cycle of life, and the inevitability of death. However, while deities in most mythological systems appear in anthropomorphic forms, that is, endowed with human traits and weaknesses, in Chinese mythology, gods are entirely different entities, personifying cosmic forces and principles. In the Chinese mythological consciousness, the universe appears as a vast, meticulously organized empire, where even immortal beings are subject to strict, hierarchical laws and rules. At the head of this celestial empire sits the Jade Emperor, revered as the supreme ruler of the heavens, but he is not an omnipotent creator. Instead, he acts as an administrator of the universe, managing the complex mechanism of cosmic processes. Under his wise leadership operates an extensive divine bureaucracy, consisting of numerous ministers responsible for various elements, judges meticulously monitoring the karmic consequences of mortals' actions, and countless officials scrupulously recording people's deeds and deciding their afterlife fate. In this world, where everything is permeated with the spirit of order and harmony, the foundation of all existence lies in strict laws, carefully crafted rituals, and unwavering adherence to hierarchy. Even after death, a person does not disappear without a trace, but passes through a complex system of 10 courts of hell, where their earthly life is examined in detail based on meticulously recorded scrolls. A fair verdict is delivered, and only then does the soul embark on a new reincarnation in accordance with the law of karma. All processes are clearly regulated, systematically organized, and subject to immutable rules, ensuring the stability of the universe. However, where strict rules exist, there will always be someone who dares to break them. One day, a completely unexpected guest appeared in the heavenly palace, a monkey miraculously born from stone, possessing extraordinary strength and a defiant disposition. This monkey, named Sun Wukong, was unlike any other mortal, and his ambitions extended far beyond his assigned place in the hierarchy. He tirelessly mastered magical arts, mastered complex combat techniques, audaciously stole sacred peaches of immortality from the heavens, which granted eternal life, and publicly declared that he was now equal to the Jade Emperor himself, challenging the established world order. Numerous celestial armies were dispatched against the rebellious monkey, sages and sorcerers were summoned, and desperate attempts were made to subdue him by force, but no one could defeat him, demonstrating his incredible power and rebellious spirit. While heroes in other mythological systems often engage in open conflict with the gods, Chinese mythology features examples where heroes alter the very nature of the world, solving global problems that the celestial beings could not handle. For example, when a terrible flood struck China, inundating vast territories and bringing untold suffering to the people, they cried out to the heavens for help. However, the celestial beings remained indifferent, not intervening in the course of events. Then, one man, Yu the Great, filled with determination to save his people, decided to act independently, taking responsibility for the fate of the world. Yu the Great did not try to stop the elements by force, nor did he engage in a senseless battle with the raging water. Instead, he demonstrated wisdom and foresight by changing the riverbeds themselves, constructing intricate channels, and directing the powerful water flows in the right direction. Thanks to his persistent labor and engineering genius, the flood receded, freeing fertile lands, and people were able to return to normal life, rebuilding their settlements and restoring their economy. Not war, but reason, profound knowledge, and tireless labor became the salvation for the people, which is an important lesson passed down from generation to generation. These stories are alive to this day, finding their reflection in Chinese architecture, in vibrant festivals, in elegant martial arts, and in the very way of life of the Chinese people. Even the structure of the state itself, where order, discipline, and hierarchy are valued above all else, resembles the celestial empire, where everything is subject to strict laws and rules, ensuring stability and prosperity. But before diving into the world of gods, heroes, epic battles, and captivating myths, it is necessary to understand how this world came to be, how the universe as we know it arose, because once upon a time, neither heaven nor earth, nor even the Jade Emperor himself, ruling the celestial realm, existed. In the beginning, there was only boundless emptiness, a formless chaos enveloping all existence. And one day, from this primordial void, like a seed from the earth, a giant was born, destined to become the creator of the world. When time itself had not yet begun its count, absolute chaos reigned in the universe, having neither form nor boundaries. Various elements merged randomly with each other, arising and instantly disappearing, flowing into one another like an elusive mist, not subject to any laws. But within this chaos, deeply hidden in its very core, a new order began to take shape, a harbinger of change to come. At the very center of the chaos was a cosmic egg, filled with the pure energy of yin and yang, symbolizing light and darkness, the masculine and feminine principles, the unity of opposites. There, in this enclosed space, immersed in a deep sleep, dwelt the giant Pangu, unaware of his great destiny, or even that the world around him did not yet exist. Time did not exist for him, because time had not yet been created, and he was beyond its power. Countless thousands of years passed, until one day Pangu awoke from his eternal sleep and opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was impenetrable darkness, surrounding him on all sides, pressing down and filling every cell of his enormous body, like confinement in a cramped cave. The world around was tight, enclosed, compressed into one indivisible whole, not allowing space for movement. He tried to move, but the space did not give him freedom, restricting his movements. Then he suddenly felt an immense power lurking within him, a power capable of changing the world. For the first time, he realized that he could change this world, that he was meant for something more than just existing in captivity. He reached out his huge hand and felt the edge of the shell that limited his freedom. It was as strong as stone, but inside himself he felt a growing rage and an unwavering determination to break free. He took in his hands a huge axe, which was born from his very will, from his desire for freedom and creation, and with a swing delivered a crushing blow. A deafening crack resounded, echoing through the silent void like a clap of thunder, awakening the world from its eternal sleep. The world around began to vibrate. Cracks like lightning ran across the shell, and with each new blow delivered by Pangu, its walls cracked more and more, bringing closer the moment of liberation. Finally, after countless blows, the shell of the cosmic egg shattered into many pieces, and its fragments scattered in different directions, marking the birth of a new world. Light, pure elements that made up the upper part of the egg soared upward, forming an endless sky stretching overhead. All the heavy, dense and clumsy elements that were in the lower part of the egg sank down, forming the earth on which all living things would live. But when the shell finally disappeared, Pangu anxiously saw that the world was not yet ready for existence, that it was still unstable, shaky and fragile, like a morning mist, ready to dissipate at the slightest breath of wind. The sky seemed to barely hold itself in space, as if hanging by a thread from falling, threatening to descend again and merge with the earth, plunging all existence into the primeval chaos from which it had once arisen. At this critical moment, Pangu realized that if he did not tirelessly maintain balance, the world, so painstakingly created by him, would disappear forever, dissolving into the formless void. Filled with determination, he straightened to his full enormous height, firmly planted his feet on the ground, like the roots of a tree going deep into the soil, and with his hands stubbornly propped up the sky, preventing it from collapsing downward, holding it back from its imminent fall. Every day, like a sprout reaching for the sun, he grew steadily. With each passing moment, he became taller and stronger, and with him grew and expanded the universe, acquiring its outlines. A huge void formed between the earth and the sky, a space in which gradually everything could arise, all forms of life, all the phenomena that fill the world. Tens of thousands of years, like an eternity, he stood there, steadfastly holding the world on his mighty shoulders, fulfilling his great mission. Everything that existed in this nascent world depended solely on his tireless efforts, on his steadfastness and selflessness. His breath became a gusty wind, scattering the seeds of life across the expanses of the earth. His voice sounded like peals of thunder, heralding the power of nature, and his movements determined the smooth course of time, establishing the rhythm of cosmic processes. Day after day, night after night, he stood, knowing no fatigue, tirelessly watching as the world gradually strengthened, gained strength, and achieved stability. When he finally felt that the sky no longer threatened to fall, that the earth was strong enough to withstand the weight of all existence, and that the necessary order had been established in the world, he, tired of the immeasurable burden, closed his eyes and collapsed to the ground. His body could no longer hold up the world, but he no longer needed to, as the universe could now exist on its own without his constant support. His last breath, full of fatigue and satisfaction, swept through the world like a stormy wind, like a farewell greeting from the Creator to his creation. His voice sounded for the last time in deafening peals of thunder, proclaiming the completion of his great mission. When he fell, his body, worn out from eternal labor, became an integral part of the world he had created. His flesh transformed into fertile soil, giving life to plants and animals. His blood became great rivers, nourishing the land and binding it together. His hair became dense forests, sheltering countless inhabitants, and his bones formed majestic mountain ranges, towering over the plains like guardians of the world. Even his sweat, falling to the ground in countless drops, gave life to the first rains, irrigating the land and bestowing upon it fertility. But what happened to his immortal soul, which had left his mortal body? It is said that it spread throughout the world, filling it with vital force, permeating all things with its energy and giving it life. Some claim that the first gods arose from his last breath, accepting the baton of the Creator and continuing his great work, governing the world and guiding the destinies of people. Others believe that it was from his spirit that the first human appeared, endowed with reason and will, the one who was destined to populate this new land, cultivate it, build cities, and create civilizations. Thus ended the great journey of the Titan Pangu, who sacrificed himself to create the world, giving all his strength and life for the well-being of future generations. Since then, in China they say, all greatness requires sacrifice, which reminds people of the need for selflessness and hard work to achieve great goals. The world is not born without labor and effort. It requires constant care and attention, and every creation, be it a work of art or a new invention, demands tremendous effort and dedication. The great order of the world that we see around us did not arise by itself. It was carefully built, maintained, and protected at the cost of enormous sacrifices, which is an important lesson for everyone. But Pangu only laid a solid foundation, separating the sky and the earth and creating a space for life. However, the sky and earth were still empty, not filled with life, and not subject to any laws. The world was great and beautiful, but it did not yet have life, harmony, or order. His birth was complete, but his story was just beginning, and he still had much to do to complete the creation of the world. When Pangu fell, his body became the world, but the universe was not yet complete, and it needed further development and ordering. Mountains, rivers, forests, and clouds already existed, but their movement was chaotic and unpredictable. Water flowed aimlessly, spreading across the plains and flooding them. The wind rushed through the open spaces, not knowing when to stop. Night could last forever, plunging the world into darkness, and day did not always replace it, disrupting the natural order. The world desperately needed a law that would direct its flow, give it rhythm, and make it alive, filling it with harmony and order. Thus, yin and yang appeared, two opposite but complementary forces permeating the very fabric of reality. These were the forces that permeated the very fabric of reality, binding all things together, maintaining balance, and ensuring harmony. Yang was the personification of light, fire, the sun, and movement. It rose upward, warming everything around it with its heat and giving strength and growth to all living things. Yin was the symbol of darkness, moisture, the moon, and tranquility. It flowed downward, cooling and giving rest and completion to all things, bringing calm and peace. But they were not enemies. They did not fight each other, but complemented and balanced each other, creating a harmonious unity. Where yang ignited flames, yin brought water to prevent them from getting out of control and destroying everything around them. Where yang moved the wind, yin turned it into rain, filling rivers and lakes with life-giving moisture. Yang created deafening thunder, and yin created the calming silence that followed it, creating contrast and harmony. One could not exist without the other, because light cannot exist without shadow, and movement has no meaning without rest, and only their interaction creates a complete world. But the world was not divided into two distinct halves. It was woven from a complex interweaving of these forces, permeating all things. If yang were pure and perfect, it would burn all living things with its untamed flame, turning the world into a lifeless desert. If yin became absolute, the world would freeze, plunging into eternal rest, devoid of movement and life. In every ray of sunlight, there is a corner of shadow. In every night, there is a glimmer of light, and it is this interaction that creates the beauty and harmony of the world. Everything flows, changes, transforms into something else, obeying the law of change and circulation. Thus appeared day and night, summer and winter, life and death, all the cyclical phenomena that determine the rhythm of the universe. Everything that is born must eventually disappear, but from disappearance, something new will arise again, continuing the endless cycle of rebirths and changes, sustaining life in the universe. People living in this world did not just observe this law, they learned it, adapting to its rhythm and using it for their benefit. They understood that if a river flows too violently, it will erode the banks, causing damage to settlements, and if it stands still, it will turn into a swamp, spreading disease and depriving all life around it. They saw that a person who only works tirelessly, without giving himself a break, will quickly burn out, like a candle, and one who lives in constant peace, without being active, will wither, like a plant without sunlight. They understood that hardness and flexibility must be in balance, complementing each other, and that the world moves not in a straight line, but in a closed cycle, returning to the starting point and starting a new round. Therefore, yin and yang became the very essence of the universe, defining its rhythm and harmony. They were present in the rhythm of human life, manifesting in the alternation of work and rest, in the change of seasons, affecting the harvest and the occupations of people, in the breath of nature, now dying down in the winter cold, now awakening in the spring. They were a law that no one issued, but to which everything obeyed, from the smallest blade of grass to the huge mountains. Among those who appeared after the death of Pangu was the goddess Nuwa, whose story is full of miracles and selflessness. It is said that she was born with the first streams, when the world first found its long-awaited balance, when chaos retreated, giving way to harmony. Her body was unusual and beautiful, combining the features of a human and a snake, symbolizing her connection with nature and her ability to transform. From above, she looked like a beautiful woman with a gentle face and delicate hands. But below her waist began a long serpentine tail covered with iridescent scales, flexible and smooth as the flow of rivers. She could easily move on land, glide on water, and rise to the clouds, feeling no obstacles, as if she were part of nature itself. Nuwa was a creator goddess, but not a ruler. She did not aspire to power or glory. Unlike the Jade Emperor, who ruled the heavens, she did not care about controlling the world. Her goal was different, more noble and sublime. She wanted to create those who would live in this world, feel its beauty, learn its secrets, and fill it with meaning through their labor and creativity. She traveled the earth for a long time, studying the forests and mountains, gazing into the mirror-like surface of the lakes, trying to understand what life should be like, what kind of being should be able to experience the fullness of existence. She saw the clouds floating across the sky, changing their shapes, how the rivers steadily found their way to the sea, overcoming all obstacles, how the fire danced in the wind, mesmerizing with its beauty and power. All this was beautiful, but it simply existed, following its predetermined path without will or reason, without being able to change anything. And then she decided to create a being that could be part of the world, harmoniously coexist with it, but at the same time could change it, improve it, and transform it with its mind and labor. She stopped on the bank of one of the great rivers winding across the plain, and bending down, dipped her hand into the clay, soft and pliable, as if alive. She began to sculpt, putting all her love and care into her creation. Her fingers moved confidently, with love and care, as if before her was something incredibly fragile and precious, requiring special attention. She sculpted the first human, investing in him a part of her soul. It was a small being, similar to herself, but with 2 legs instead of a snake's tail, with slender hands capable of creating and building. She blew on him, breathing life into him, and he stirred, as if awakening from a long sleep. At first, he looked frightened, not understanding where he was, but then he stood up, looked around, took a step, another. He saw the boundless sky, heard the sound of water, felt the warm air on his skin, and smiled, feeling all the beauty and harmony of the world. Nuwa felt immense joy and satisfaction watching her creation. She realized that she had done something beautiful, that she had created a being capable of knowing the world and filling it with meaning, and she wanted there to be more of them. She sculpted one person after another, investing in each a part of herself, and soon new people appeared next to the first, surrounding him. They took each other's hands, laughed, rejoiced in life, and looked at the world with delight, admiring its beauty. Nuwa enjoyed watching them, but soon realized that this process was too slow and laborious, that she would not be able to sculpt each person by hand, otherwise the creation of the world would take forever, and she would not have time to complete her great mission. Then she came up with a new, faster way to create people, showing her ingenuity. She took a long rope, dipped it in liquid clay, and began to wave it in the air, as if drawing intricate patterns in the sky. Drops of mud flew in different directions, falling to the ground, and each drop miraculously turned into a human. The world quickly filled with life. The voices of people filled the plains and hills, the banks of rivers, and the foothills of mountains, creating a unique symphony of life. But soon, she noticed that not all people were the same, that there were differences between them. Those whom she sculpted with her own hands, investing her soul in them, were strong, beautiful, and thoughtful, endowed with wisdom and nobility. They were noble, held a high position in society, and were distinguished by their moral qualities. And those who appeared from drops of clay splattered by the rope were crude and imperfect, not endowed with special talents or abilities. They were ordinary folk, artisans, farmers, and servants, toiling hard and possessing no special privileges. Thus, social inequality arose in the world, a division between the noble and the common. But this was an inevitable consequence of the world's rapid creation. The nobles were born from the goddess's very hands, imbued with her blessing, while commoners emerged from a scattering, yet all were her children. But Nuwa loved all her children equally, making no distinction between them, and she strived to ensure they lived in peace and harmony. She did not discriminate, believing that every person was essential and played a role in the world. She taught them to live in harmony, respect one another, and offer aid in times of need. The strong were to govern, the wise were to teach, but each individual was important and an integral part of the world, contributing to its diversity and beauty. However, her story did not end there. New trials and heroic deeds awaited her. When the world was teeming with life, when people had populated every corner of the earth, the sky suddenly fractured, as if shattered into shards. The great pillars that supported it cracked, unable to bear the weight, and dark storms began to descend upon the earth, threatening to obliterate all living things. Fires engulfed forests, rivers overflowed their banks, inundating fields and settlements, and fiery stones plummeted from the heavens, destroying everything around them, plunging the world into chaos. The people she had created with such love cried out in fear, seeking refuge in caves and mountains, but there was no escape from the unleashed elements. Then Nuwa realized that if she did not repair this world, did not restore what was destroyed, it would once again descend into chaos, and all her efforts would be in vain. She journeyed to the great turtle, an ancient and wise being, and asked for its legs, and with their help she raised the sky so it would no longer fall, restoring the shattered balance. She gathered multicolored stones scattered across the land and melted them in a vast furnace, creating a vibrant mixture with which she filled the gaping cracks in the heavens, like a skilled potter artfully mending a broken vessel, returning it to its pristine form. The sky no longer fell to earth, threatening to annihilate all life. The catastrophe was averted thanks to her selflessness and artistry, but the price Nuwa had to pay for saving the world was steep. Having spent all her strength and energy on restoring the sky, she felt her time on this earth was coming to an end, that her mission was complete. She knew that she would no longer be able to walk among the people, admire the beauty of sunrises and sunsets, and listen to the laughter of those she had created with such affection. But she no longer needed to fear for them, because the world was saved, and they could continue to live without fear of destruction. She watched with satisfaction as people rebuilt their ruined homes, as they raised children, passing on their knowledge and experience, creating their future. The world, which had once been empty and lifeless, now lived its own life, full of joy and hope. It is said that upon dying, Nuwa dissolved into the world she had created, becoming an inseparable part of it. Her immortal spirit remained in the stones and clay, in the wind and water, in the breath of every person, a reminder of her love and care. She did not vanish without a trace, but became a part of all her children, continuing to live in their hearts and deeds. Since then, the Chinese believe that every person carries a particle of divine power, that everyone has their purpose in this world, and that they must leave their mark, doing something beneficial for others. But the world continued to live its own life, evolving according to its own laws. The gods, born alongside the universe, wandered aimlessly, lacking guidance and order, and there was neither ruler, nor court, nor law among them to establish justice and harmony. The world was ungoverned, prone to chaos and disorder, and in need of a strong and wise ruler. Then appeared the one destined to take the throne among the celestials and establish order in the universe, the Jade Emperor. But unlike the gods, who existed from the very beginning, arising from the primordial chaos, he was not a primeval force, but rather an embodiment of reason and will, and his role was different, consisting in organizing and managing the already existing world. He arrived when the universe was already in existence and brought to it what it lacked: order, justice, and harmony. necessary for its further development. But the path to power was not easy or short, full of trials and tribulations. It is said that he was once a mere mortal, living on earth and striving for perfection. He was one who tirelessly studied the art of governance, comprehended the wisdom of the heavens and earth, and sought harmony in every movement, striving for the ideal. He lived for thousands of years, growing ever wiser and more experienced, yet not aging, retaining his youth and strength of spirit. His will, spirit, and intellect grew ever stronger until one day he crossed that invisible line that separates mortal from immortal, attaining enlightenment. Then he rose above the mortal world and above the heavens themselves, finding himself in the realm of the gods. He came to a place where there was no authority, but where it was desperately needed, where chaos and disorder reigned. And when turmoil arose among the gods, when storms threatened to shatter the heavens, he was the one who could halt the chaos, demonstrating his wisdom and strength of will. He ascended to the throne of the celestial palace not by force, but by his own righteousness and wisdom, earning the respect and recognition of the other gods. And from that moment, the world changed forever, acquiring long-awaited order and harmony. Now every god had their place in the hierarchy, their duties, and their sphere of responsibility. Those who were responsible for water received rivers into their dominion, managing their flow and ensuring the fertility of the lands. Those who controlled the winds were no longer restless wanderers, but obeyed a single will, directing their forces for the good of the world. Now they were summoned only when they were truly needed, avoiding chaotic storms and destruction. The gods of thunder, rain, sun, and moon knew when their time would come and performed their duties in accordance with the established order. Even the underworlds, the realm of the dead, no longer existed in disorder, but were subject to strict rules and laws. Now the souls of the departed were judged there not according to the whims of evil spirits, but according to strict laws determining their future fate. Thus, an eternal order was established in the universe, ensuring its stability and prosperity. But the Jade Emperor was not a god who descends to the people and interferes in their daily lives, helping or punishing them. He sat on his majestic throne, surrounded by celestial officials, tirelessly watching over the universe, issuing decrees and rendering judgment among the gods, ensuring compliance with laws and regulations. Throughout the centuries of his wise reign, he often faced those who dared to challenge him, who tried to disrupt the established order. Great spirits rebelled against him, attempting to overthrow him from the throne and seize power, and demons tried to break into the celestial palace to sow chaos and destruction. But despite all the uprisings and rebellions, he remained steadfast on his throne, demonstrating his strength and wisdom. Dynasties of humans replaced one another, rulers of mortal worlds appeared and disappeared, but in the heavens, no one could take his place. No one could compare to him in wisdom and justice. But under his rule were not only the gods, but also other forces inhabiting the universe. Down below, in the rivers, forests, and mountains, there existed other forces, spirits that were not gods, but that could still alter the destinies of mortals, influencing their lives. And not all of them were kind. Many were malicious and cunning, seeking to harm people. The Jade Emperor ruled the heavens, but even his immense power could not encompass everything at once, could not control every corner of the universe. The universe was too vast, its laws too complex, and events too numerous for one ruler to handle everything. He could not manage the reins himself, watch over the destinies of mortals, and fight against evil spirits. Like any emperor in the world of humans, he needed loyal officials, wise ministers, and just judges who could conduct the affairs of the celestial palace, helping him govern the universe. Thus arose the divine bureaucracy, a complex structure of power that permeated all things, from the highest celestial halls to the world of mortals, and even the depths of the underworld, ensuring order and harmony in all spheres of existence. Each god in the celestial palace held a strictly defined position, and each official was responsible for their specific area of the universe, ensuring its smooth functioning. If rain fell too early or too late, disrupting the agricultural cycle, if a ship encountered a fierce storm or a person suddenly died out of nowhere, it was not a matter of chance or ill fate, but the result of a deliberate decision made in the celestial palace, where all events were predetermined. When a thunderstorm began in the world, shaking the earth with its thunderous roars, it was not merely a chaotic play of the elements, but a strictly organized process controlled by divine forces. It was a decree issued from the heavens, the strict execution of a decision made by the gods who were responsible for managing the elements, ensuring their harmonious interaction. The thunderstorm, with its lightning and thunder, was led by Lei Gong, the fearsome god of thunder, inspiring fear and awe. He was not a deity of mercy and compassion, but rather an enforcer of justice. His main task was to punish the guilty, unleashing the wrath of the heavens upon them. His hands, clawed and strong, held a massive mallet with which he furiously struck a drum, causing deafening peals of thunder, heralding his approach. It is said that he held a long list of criminals in his hands, those who had committed atrocities and violated the laws of the universe, and when he found those who deserved punishment, he would not hesitate to unleash heavenly retribution upon them, demonstrating his strength and justice. But Lei Gong never worked alone, acting solo. Thunder did not come without rain, and rain did not fall from the heavens without the knowledge of its lord, Yushi, the mighty god of rain. He alone decided when the land needed abundant rainfall to nourish the crops and ensure a bountiful harvest, when it should parch, suffering from drought, and when it should be submerged, enduring devastating floods. If the crops withered from drought, or if torrential rains battered the fields, it signified that the divine department responsible for weather management had made its choice, and the people were to accept this decree. The wind, on the other hand, fell under the jurisdiction of Fengbo, the lord of air currents, who commanded the winds and storms. If a fierce storm arose at sea, threatening to engulf ships, or if trees snapped under the onslaught of gale-force winds, it meant that he had received orders from higher authorities and he was merely carrying out his duty. Sometimes it was a punishment for sins, and at others a warning of impending misfortunes. But even these mighty gods were but parts of a vast system, subject to a single order. For beyond the elements that could be observed and felt, there existed more subtle matters, such as life and destiny, which defied ordinary understanding. And these were handled by entirely different officials, vested with special powers and knowledge. The heavens decided not only when it would rain or thunder, determining the weather conditions on earth. It decided the fate of every mortal, preordaining their life's journey. The path they were destined to tread, the trials and joys that awaited them. Whether they would be born rich or poor, noble or common, and whether they would be happy or unhappy in their lives. The Department of Destinies was responsible for this, meticulously recording the history of each person, and overseen by Siming, the celestial scribe, who wielded immense power. He kept detailed scrolls of life and death, carefully inscribing the names of all who were born and died, determining the length of their lives and the circumstances of their passing. When a child was born, their fate was already written in these scrolls, their successes and failures already predetermined, and they could not alter their destined path. But he had assistants who could influence a person's destiny, aiding them in times of hardship. Some of them resided in the world of mortals, observing their lives and deeds. These were the 3 stars, the gods of happiness, longevity, and wealth, generously bestowing gifts upon those who lived righteously and deserved the favor of the heavens. They could alter a person's fate, but only if they had earned it through their good deeds and virtuous life. Others maintained the Book of Rebirths, in which was recorded what the next incarnation of a soul would be, determining its future destiny in the cycle of life. But the most feared and formidable was the department that watched over those who violated the laws of the universe, those whose sins were so great that they could not be forgiven. For them, an afterlife trial was prepared, where souls were sent after death to face their deserved punishment. And if, in the world of the living, punishment had somehow eluded a person, it would surely await them there, in the afterlife, where no one could escape justice. The Jade Emperor, being the supreme ruler, did not delve into every case personally, but relied on his officials and the system he had created. He had established a complex and efficient system, and it functioned flawlessly, ensuring order and justice in the universe. Nothing happened by chance, but in accordance with pre-written scrolls, where all events were described and all destinies were predetermined. A person could live in the illusion of freedom, believing that they controlled their own life, but in reality, their life was already inscribed in the celestial archives, and what happened to them was merely the fulfillment of a long-standing decision, not subject to change. The celestial palace ruled the universe, but ordinary people rarely turned their gaze to the distant and inaccessible emperor, considering him too detached from their everyday problems. The great gods sat on their magnificent thrones, issuing commands and recording destinies, but their will concerned the overall order of the universe, not the life of each individual person with their joys and sorrows. People sought protectors, patrons, and those who heard their voices, who knew their concerns and could help not in the abstract sense of the universe's arrangement, but in concrete earthly matters, solving their pressing problems. Such beings became gods, once ordinary mortals, whose valor and strength of spirit made them more than just humans, elevating them above the rest. They lived among mortals, understood their needs, and knew what it meant to fight for truth and achieve justice. They were revered in every city, and people turned to them for advice in difficult times, placing them on par with ancient forces because they were living figures who could change a person's destiny, showing their mercy and compassion. The name Gwandi was known to all who had ever heard stories of duty and a spirit that could not be broken, of loyalty and honor. He was a great general, a man whose fame preceded him, whose exploits inspired people for centuries. When his earthly life ended, the world could not let him go, could not forget his deeds. Those like him do not disappear without a trace, and do not become nameless shadows in the endless stream of rebirths, but continue to live in the memory of the people. He remained in the memory of the people to continue serving as a shield for those who fight for justice, protecting the weak and oppressed. He became a revered god of war, but not war for the sake of conquest, but war where strength belongs to those who defend the truth and stand up for their beliefs without fear of death. His image hung proudly in the homes of wise judges, in the shops of honest merchants, and in the halls of valiant military leaders, reminding them of the need to uphold moral principles. Oaths that could not be broken were sworn before his image, for Gwandi was believed to see all and punish liars. He was invoked in moments when more than just skill with weapons was required, when one had to stand to the end, even if all the power of the world was against you, demonstrating incredible resilience and courage. But not every person was a warrior ready for battle. Most people sought not bloody battles, but a peaceful life and prosperity, striving for well-being and abundance. They built lively markets, opened trading rows, and sought fortune, hoping to get rich. In a world where hard work did not always bring the desired result, and wealth could come or disappear in an instant, there was a firm belief that luck was a special force that could be attracted if one knew how, using certain rituals and ceremonies. Kaishan was the one who could bestow the favor of fate, generously rewarding those who revered him. He was not asked for wealth out of greed and a thirst for gain, but only for what was necessary for a decent life. He was revered by those who understood that hard work is the foundation of everything, that without effort there will be no fruit. But even the most skilled craftsman, putting his heart into his work, could be left without a deserved reward if the stars did not align at the right moment, if luck turned away from him. His images and signs were respectfully hung at the doors of houses, hoping that he would make the year successful and profitable, protecting them from troubles and misfortunes. His statues stood proudly in shops, exuding prosperity, as even the most cunning and experienced merchants knew perfectly well that without his blessing, the most profitable deal could fall through at the very last moment, leaving them with nothing. Asking him for help meant acknowledging that the world is driven not only by tireless efforts, but also by the favor of higher powers, helping those who believe in miracles. People came to him with generous gifts, because only those who know how to share with others can receive more, following the law of the universe. But even wealth meant nothing if there was no order and justice in the world. One could be a brave warrior or a lucky merchant, but if the land on which you live is mired in corruption and injustice, if evil goes unpunished and the truth can be bought with money, then in such a world there is no point in either strength or gold, for they will not bring happiness and prosperity. Every city needed someone to protect it from evil through the law, defending the innocent and punishing the guilty. Cheng Huang was not a celestial being sitting on a throne in the celestial palace, but his power was felt on every street of the city, in every home, and in every heart. His invisible spirit lived within the walls of cities, protecting them from evil. He was a tireless observer, seeing everything that happened even in the darkest and most secluded alleys. He saw everything that people tried to hide from him, all the secret misdeeds. He did not allow crimes to go unpunished, punishing the guilty and restoring justice. Those who hoped to deceive earthly justice feared him more than earthly judges, because human law could be circumvented by bribing officials, but no one could hide from the court of Cheng Huang, for he saw everything and knew the truth. Those who hid from punishment sooner or later met their ignominious end, not understanding how their secret was revealed and who betrayed them. Even those who presided over earthly courts bowed their heads before him, because they understood that he knew the truth as the world itself knew it, seeing all the actions and thoughts of people. These gods, once ordinary mortals, were an integral part of the everyday lives of people, managing their destinies and helping them in difficult moments. They heard prayers, intervened in the course of events, helped those in need, and punished the guilty, demonstrating their justice. They were living forces with whom people felt connected every day, experiencing deep respect and gratitude towards them. They did not demand blind worship, but respect for them was stronger than fear of the distant and inaccessible celestial beings living in the heavenly palace, because their will could change the life of a mortal here and now, influencing their destiny and giving hope. But alongside those who protected and bestowed luck, there were other forces that lived in the shadows, in the dark corners of the world. Their sinister presence was felt in the darkness of the night, in the ominous rustling behind one's back, and in careless words that were best left unspoken for fear of inviting misfortune. These were beings that belonged neither to the world of humans nor to the world of gods, residing between them in a perpetual liminal state. They were feared, risky deals were made with them, and attempts were made to appease them in order to avoid their wrath. They stood as an eternal reminder that death isn't always the end, that something else exists beyond life, something frightening and unknown. Life proceeded according to its own rules. A person could love, hate, strive for prosperity, or indulge in vices, but one day their path would end, and they would die. The body would cool, breath would cease, and it would seem that everything was over forever, that eternal darkness had descended. But if death meant farewell to this world for the living, for the soul, it became the beginning of a new journey leading into uncharted territories. When this inevitable moment arrived, no one greeted the soul with comfort and joy, but rather with trepidation and anticipation. Before the soul opened the gates leading to the gloomy realm of Yan Wang, the sovereign of the underworld, the ruler of hell. There was no sun to provide warmth and light, but across the vast plains stretched an ashen sky, veiled in a dense haze, through which a deathly light barely penetrated, creating an oppressive atmosphere. There was no wind carrying the sense of life, but the silence was filled with the ominous whispers of countless destinies, voices of those who had already passed through the dreaded trial and were now awaiting their new birth, experiencing both fear and hope. In the midst of this somber realm stood a majestic black palace, symbolizing eternity and the immutability of law, to which bridges led, skillfully crafted from black stone, polished and eroded by the countless steps of souls that had crossed them over the ages. On either side of the road leading to the palace stood motionless spirit guides, pale and faceless like shadows. Their slender forms cast no shadows, and their garments did not stir in the wind, creating an eerie and oppressive atmosphere. They silently followed the souls, guiding them forward towards the one who ruled this grim world, the Lord of the Underworld. Beyond the palace's enormous gates lay the grand hall of judgment, so tall that its vaults were lost in impenetrable darkness, creating a sense of infinity and overwhelming with its gloom. The throne, a symbol of power and justice, stood atop dozens of steps, massive as if hewn from the very night, adorned with intricate carvings resembling tongues of fire, like the flames of hell, symbolizing torment and suffering. There, in the depths of the impenetrable darkness, sat Yan Wang, the formidable master of the afterlife, the arbiter of fates. His face resembled a lifeless stone mask, still, devoid of any emotion, as if he himself were a part of this bleak realm, impervious to feelings. His eyes shone from within with a dim yellow light, like the reflection of a flickering candle in an old bronze mirror, piercing the soul with their gaze. He spoke no superfluous words, asked no questions, because all the answers were already before him, inscribed in the soul's history. In his hands, he held the scroll of fates, unfurled, covered with endless lines and symbols, in which every life, every thought, and every deed was meticulously recorded, determining the soul's future. Yet he himself did not decide the fate of the soul, but merely observed the process of justice. 10 formidable judges obeyed him, each ruling in their own palace, located in the depths of the underworld, and rendering their verdict. The soul began its long and arduous journey from the first hall, where its past was revealed in all its ugliness, without embellishment or justification. A person might forget what they had done in life, might not think about their actions, might make excuses to others, trying to conceal their sins, but here they saw everything, as if reliving every choice, feeling the consequences of their deeds. One judge scrutinized the purity of the person's thoughts, whether their intentions were sincere. Another examined the motives and intentions behind their actions, whether they were good or evil, selfless or selfish. A third saw how the person treated others, who suffered because of them, and who received help and support, determining their degree of compassion. A fourth assessed the pain and suffering they brought into this world, even if they were unaware of it, measuring their impact on those around them. And there was no way to lie, to turn away from the truth, or to escape one's fate, for all that was hidden became manifest. With each new stage, with each hall of judgment passed, their life became clearer, like a complex pattern that formed from disparate lines, displaying the whole picture of their earthly existence. If the soul's path was light and righteous, it passed through these halls without delay, experiencing no particular suffering. The judges said nothing, but silently followed it with their gaze, allowing it to move on to its deserved reward. The road led the soul to the magnificent wheel of fate, which slowly rotated in the very center of Yan Wang's palace, radiating a mysterious light. It resembled a huge disk, skillfully carved from light stone, covered with ancient symbols whose lines glowed with a soft, bluish light, creating a sense of unreality. Inside it, endless reflections of destinies shimmered like stars in the night sky, demonstrating the diversity of lives. In its depths flowed rivers of time, faces of those who once lived and those who were yet to be born, intermingled, creating a captivating spectacle. The wheel moved silently, as if obeying an invisible force. Its rotation never stopped for a moment, spinning eternally, a reminder of the endless cycle of rebirth. It remembered no names, but it held karma, that invisible force that determined the fate of every soul, its future birth and life. If a life was lived with dignity, in accordance with moral principles, the new birth brought peace and happiness, rewarding the soul for its righteousness. If, on the other hand, the path was darkened by evil and sins, the new body became a prison, and life became a severe test, atoning for past sins. The wheel led everyone to where their own choices and actions had brought them, a just outcome. But sometimes the soul's transition to the afterlife was interrupted, and it could not continue its journey. Something powerful forced the soul to remain in the world of the living, drawn to a world where it no longer belonged, giving it no rest. This is how Gui, restless and forlorn ghosts, appeared, unable to find their way further, beyond the gates of death. Some of them remained harmless, simply longing for their past life. They would return home, enshroud their loved ones in invisible sorrow, and remind them of their presence in quiet dreams, as if trying to convey their message. Sometimes their presence could be felt, a subtle connection to the other world. In a cold gust through a sealed window, in an inexplicable premonition that suddenly made the heart freeze, their unseen proximity was felt. Some believed that Gui were simply seeking recognition, that they did not want to disappear without a trace from the memory of the living, and that if a small offering was left at the door, they would leave peacefully, finding rest. Others said that souls who had been forgotten would begin to grow angry and seek revenge on the living, feeling resentment and bitterness. That if no one remembered the deceased, their spirit would transform into a hungry shadow, no longer understanding why it was here, and begin to sow chaos around itself. But there were also Gui who did not want to say goodbye to life, clinging to it with all their might. They were held back by intense hatred, a thirst for revenge or rage, preventing them from finding peace. They did not seek understanding, nor did they expect to be noticed. Their sole purpose was to inflict suffering on their offenders. They wanted those who had condemned them to death to suffer as they once had, experiencing unbearable pain. Their presence could be felt in misfortunes that occurred without reason, in disturbing dreams filled with horror, and in strange reflections where something was amiss, where reality was distorted. Their victims would begin to fall ill suddenly, lose luck in all endeavors, and go mad because they could not understand what was happening to them, who or what was haunting them. People left burning fires at their doors so that Guy could not enter the house, hung red amulets to protect against evil, and burned fragrant incense, trying to appease the spirits. But if a spirit had already chosen its victim, it was extremely difficult to get rid of it, for it pursued them relentlessly. Sometimes this meant that someone had to die in order to satisfy the ghost's anger, offering a sacrifice. Yet even the most dangerous and malevolent Guy were still human souls, retaining a fragment of humanity. They remembered who they were in life, what they had lost, and what they lacked to move on beyond the gates of death to find eternal peace. They might be angry and vengeful, but they understood pain, empathizing with the suffering of others. Mogui, in turn, were even more dangerous and insidious creatures than ordinary Guy. They belonged neither to the world of the living nor to the realm of the dead, were neither humans nor gods, but existed outside of these categories. They were not born and did not die, but simply existed eternally, as if born of chaos. They could not be seen unless they themselves wished to be noticed, for they possessed incredible power. Mowgli patiently waited for a person to leave the door open for them, for their soul to become vulnerable to their influence. They did not try to frighten a person, but acted more subtly and cunningly, imperceptibly whispering doubts and fears into their ear. Their voices merged with the person's own thoughts, and the person did not even realize that something had changed, that they were under the influence of an otherworldly force. They didn't say kill directly, nor did they give orders, but merely asked provocative questions that made a person doubt themselves and their abilities. What if you never achieve what you want? if all your dreams remain unfulfilled? They're laughing behind your back. Can't you feel it? Can't you see their scornful looks? And the person would begin to think that these questions were their own, that these were their own doubts and fears, unaware that they were being manipulated by a powerful spirit. Sometimes, Mogi could be seen out of the corner of the eye, their presence felt. At first, it was only a vague silhouette at the edge of vision, an indistinct figure in a reflection, or a slight movement in the darkness, barely perceptible. Then they stood closer, revealing themselves more and more clearly. They would appear where they shouldn't be, in the most unexpected places. They spoke with the voices people longed to hear, promising to grant wishes and solve all problems. That's precisely why people were so afraid of mirrors, considering them gateways to the other world. During the day, they were ordinary objects, reflecting reality. But at night, you could see something frightening and sinister in them, something that didn't belong to this world, something that lurked in the shadows. It was said that mirrors shouldn't be left uncovered at night, lest they let evil in. In the darkness, they didn't just reflect the surrounding world. They invited otherworldly forces to enter our realm, opening a portal. Sometimes, you could see something extra in them, something that wasn't there in reality, such as a movement that didn't occur in the room or a face staring intently at you from the depths of the mirror. It was said that if you stared too long and intently into such an ominous mirror, it would begin to stare back, penetrating your soul. Superstitions weren't born out of thin air, but were based on centuries of experience and observation. 4 candles were never to be placed in a room, for that attracted death. The number 4 sounded like the word death, and it was believed that this number brought misfortune. It's best not to turn around in empty corridors if you suddenly hear footsteps behind you, for it might be a spirit. If someone calls your name at night, you shouldn't answer immediately, lest you answer the call of death. Nature obeyed its strict laws, but behind its order lay ancient forces, powerful and unpredictable, which ruled the waters, rains and winds, determining the weather and influencing people's lives. Their presence was felt in deafening thunderclaps and in furious whirlwinds that swept across the land like the breath of a massive being. In Chinese tradition, the dragon was the primary embodiment of these forces, revered as a guardian of balance and a link between heaven and earth. Its image had accompanied emperors since ancient times, symbolizing their power and wisdom. It was believed that a ruler worthy of his high title carried the dragon's virtue, demonstrating patience, wisdom, and a deep understanding of the balance of power necessary to govern a state. Unlike predatory beasts, which display their strength through brute force and cruelty, the dragon possessed secret knowledge that allowed it to skillfully control the elements, maintaining harmony in the world. Dragon symbols proudly adorned the walls of majestic palaces, reminding all of strength and wisdom. Its image could be found on luxurious thrones, exquisite garments, and sacred ritual objects of rulers, symbolizing their connection to the heavens. An imperial decree was considered inviolable and possessing supreme power if it bore the dragon's seal, because the very image of this mythical creature symbolized the law sent down by the universe itself, binding upon all. But while a single dragon could be the patron of rulers, protecting them and granting them wisdom, other dragons, no less mighty, reigned over the most powerful forces of nature, controlling the elements. The 4 dragon kings were revered as guardians of the seas and rivers, lords of rains and tides, controlling water resources. Their lavish palaces, filled with treasures, were hidden in the dark depths of the waters, and their immense influence extended to all living things, for no people, no state could exist without water, which gives life to everything. The king of the Eastern Sea proudly ruled over the vast expanse of the ocean, stretching to the horizon. His magnificent abode, full of wonders, stood at the very bottom of the sea, amidst colorful coral gardens, and his numerous retinue consisted of spirits of the waves and long water snakes, who diligently guided the tides, obeying his will. He decided the fates of ships, unleashing sudden storms upon them or granting favorable winds, and could direct schools of fish into fishermen's nets or leave their boats empty, demonstrating his power. The king of the southern sea wisely governed the rivers and rains, determining the fate of the lands. His unwavering will determined when rain would fall to irrigate the fields, how full the life-giving rivers would be, which lands would receive a rich harvest, and which would remain dry, suffering from drought. When droughts threatened villages, desperate people turned to him with pleas, and priests performed elaborate rituals at sacred springs, hoping for his mercy. In his honor, majestic temples of rain were erected, in which fervent prayers were accompanied by valuable offerings, jade amulets symbolizing purity, and sacrificial bowls filled with pure spring water, expressing their devotion. The king of the western sea carefully guarded the origins of the mountain rivers, from where clean water flowed into the valleys, nourishing all living things. His palace, icy and impregnable, was located among frozen lakes, surrounded by snowy peaks. His breath turned water into ice, creating icy sculptures, and his movement caused avalanches to sweep away everything in their path. In secluded monasteries nestled among the rugged mountains, it was believed that he heard the sincere prayers of those who understood the value of silence, and if he so desired, he would reveal secret knowledge hidden in the depths of the snow peaks, bestowing wisdom. The king of the northern sea was a majestic guardian of the cold depths, concealing his secrets. His waters remained icy, motionless, and calm, but they concealed ancient mysteries known only to him. It was said that his chambers were located in a place where the sun never shone, and that in his domain there were forces beyond the power of even the almighty gods, hidden from prying eyes. If his anger stirred up the dark waters, flooding the coastal shores, it was considered an ominous sign, portending disaster, that something more significant than mere earthly affairs had been disturbed, that the balance needed to be restored. Dragons did not forgive negligence and disrespect for their domains, strictly punishing offenders. Ancient chronicles preserve records of instances when people tried to change the natural course of waters, draining rivers or seizing territories that rightfully belonged to the dragon kings, arousing their wrath. During the reign of the mighty Tang dynasty, one high-ranking official, seeking personal gain, ordered the course of a great river to be altered to protect his lands from devastating floods. As soon as construction began, black clouds covered the sky, a terrible storm broke out, and the waters rushed in with such incredible force that entire villages were flooded and people perished. The people saw this terrible event as the revenge of the angry dragons, and the frightened emperor had to issue a strict decree forbidding interference with the course of rivers without special permission received from the heavens, lest they incur the wrath of the gods. But it was not only the waters that had their mighty guardians protecting them from desecration. Forests, mountains, and plains, every corner of the land was inhabited by spirits, both good and evil, whose invisible influence was felt in every corner of vast China, reminiscent of magic. Some spirits were benevolent and helped those who understood their language and treated them with respect. Others punished carelessness and greed, and still others remained neutral. But all were part of a single world in which man was only one of its many inhabitants, not its master. Mountains were considered sacred places where heaven meets earth, creating a portal, and therefore their high peaks belonged to immortal spirits possessing immense power. They were incredibly powerful, but rarely interfered in the affairs of mortals, preferring to remain aloof. Some of them patronized wise monks and hermits, spending their time in meditation. Others guarded the entrance to secret worlds, protecting them from uninvited guests, and still others tested those who dared to invade their sacred territory, checking their intentions. One of the most famous and revered spirits was Hebo, a fearsome deity of mountain streams, the Lord of Waters. He lived on the inaccessible peaks of mountains, covered with eternal snow, and controlled the pure waters that flowed down, filling the life-giving rivers. When people built temples on mountain slopes, they brought him generous offerings, leaving beautiful vessels filled with pure spring water, expressing their respect. If a mountain stream dried up, which portended misfortune, or suddenly turned into a destructive storm, sweeping away everything in its path, it was considered an ominous sign, meaning that the spirit was greatly displeased with something, and it was necessary to atone for their guilt. But among the good mountain spirits, there were also evil man-eaters, meeting with whom could become a deadly trap, leading into oblivion. They lived in dark caves, lost among misty gorges, and cunningly deceived careless travelers, luring them into the dangerous depths of mountain paths from which no one returned. Legends warned that they could skillfully take the form of an ordinary person to avoid suspicion, but their treacherous reflection in the water always remained animalistic, betraying their true essence. The rivers of China have always been revered as living beings, endowed with their own will and character, capable of both giving life and taking it away. They could be generous, bringing fertility to the fields and ensuring a rich harvest, or they could be destructive, wiping entire settlements off the face of the earth, bringing death and destruction. Their powerful spirits existed as real forces that needed to be negotiated with, honoring them and making sacrifices to avoid their wrath. The Great Yellow River was considered sacred and had many guardian spirits, protecting it from desecration. The most revered was an elder in white robes, symbolizing purity and wisdom, living in the dark depths of the river, knowing all its secrets. He could appear to chosen people to warn them of impending floods, or conversely, promising a successful season for hard-working farmers, rewarding their diligence. Legends said that he often tested people, offering them tempting deals, testing them for greed and honesty. And if a mortal showed excessive greed or disrespect for him, the spirit could cruelly punish him, flooding his village or turning him into an eternal wanderer, whom the river would never let go home again, condemning him to eternal wandering. There were also ominous ghost rivers, in whose dark waters hid the souls of the drowned, who had not found peace. It was believed that on such cursed grounds one could hear them calling out the names of unwary travelers at night, hoping to trick them into the water to replenish their ranks by claiming their lives. To protect against evil spirits, stone altars were erected along riverbanks, and bright lanterns were lit to prevent the spirits from venturing onto land and harming people, thus disturbing their peace. Among all the natural spirits that inhabited the world, trees were especially revered as wise keepers of memory, knowing the past. They lived far longer than humans, observing the changing generations, and some of them, especially the old and mighty trees, could speak to those who knew how to listen, revealing their secrets. In Chinese villages, one could not simply chop down an old tree without a very good reason, for it might anger its spirit, bringing misfortune upon the village. Cypresses and pines were especially venerated, considered symbols of longevity, immortality, and wisdom, embodying the strength of the spirit. It was believed that if one embraced the ancient trunk of such a tree and listened to the silence, one could hear the quiet voices of ancestors, whispering wise advice to those willing to receive it, passing on their experience. Peach trees held particular power and protection, deemed sacred. They grew in the magical gardens of the gods, and their fruits bestowed immortality, prolonging life. Fresh peach branches were often kept in homes because they were thought to ward off evil spirits, protecting against harm. During festivals, peach amulets adorned doorways, bringing good fortune, and if illness struck a household, a small piece of peach tree bark was burned to cleanse the space of defilement, restoring harmony. There were also cursed groves, which people tried to avoid. In these places, birds never sang, and old trees with gnarled roots seemed to reach out to seize passers-by, frightening people. It was said that such sinister places belonged to evil spirits, whom it was best not to disturb, lest one incur their wrath. In Chinese culture, humans never considered themselves masters of nature, understanding its power. They could live in harmony with it, respecting its laws, honoring its strength, and seeking its blessings, asking for help. But if they forgot the balance and reverence for nature, it would sternly remind them with incessant rains lasting for weeks, rivers overflowing their banks and flooding fields, and roads disappearing without a trace into the thick fog, warning of impending doom. Those who understood these signs could live in harmony with the world around them, avoiding misfortune. Those who ignored them, neglecting the wisdom of their ancestors, became part of yet another cautionary tale told around the campfire, so that others would remember to respect nature. But while nature followed its eternal laws, the human world, full of chaos, demanded order and justice. People created it themselves, passing on valuable traditions from generation to generation, preserving the unbroken connection between the living and the dead, between the past and the future, conveying wisdom. This complex order had been forming for centuries, gradually strengthening, but it was Confucianism, the wise teaching that became the foundation of Chinese civilization, defining its values, that solidified it the most. Confucius lived in a difficult era when the country was torn apart by warring principalities fighting each other. Old foundations were crumbling, emperors were losing their former influence, and bloody wars were wiping out thriving cities, sowing chaos. He created a coherent system of views that did not rely on divine commandments, but offered clear principles for building an ideal society based on justice and harmony. He meticulously studied the ancient texts of previous sages, reviewed the rituals of the past, and sought patterns in history that made states strong and people virtuous. He concluded that the stability of society rested on proper relationships between people, where everyone should clearly follow their role, fulfilling their duties, where the younger respectfully honored the elder, and the ruler cared for his subjects, showing wisdom. The Chinese world was artfully arranged in such a way that the family became the unshakable foundation of all society, its core. A person was an integral part of their clan, being a link between past and future generations, preserving their memory. Confucius wisely said that if there is order in the family, based on respect and love, then there will be peace and prosperity in the state, and everyone will be happy. If a person reveres their parents, takes care of them in old age, and honors their memory after death, then they will also respect the ruler and faithfully follow ancient traditions, supporting the foundations of society. In every home, there was proudly an ancestral altar on which tablets with the names of deceased relatives were carefully kept, reminding of the connection between generations. They were regularly offered modest offerings, such as fresh tea, fragrant rice, and aromatic incense, expressing their gratitude. It was believed that deceased ancestors continue to exist invisibly among their descendants, guiding them on the right path, protecting them from troubles, watching their actions, and showing care. If a family forgot its ancestors, neglecting rituals, it lost their blessing and was deprived of protection, bringing misfortune upon itself. But respect for parents during their lifetime was no less important than veneration of ancestors. The father, as a rule, was the head of the family, and his wise word was law, determining the life of the household members. The son had no right to openly argue with his father, even if he considered him wrong, showing respect. Obedience was not considered a weakness, but on the contrary was a sign of nobility and high morality. Even if the father was mistaken in his decision, the son should respectfully and tactfully remind him of his duty, but in no case contradict him openly, showing wisdom. This important principle of respect and subordination extended to the entire society, defining its structure. The emperor was revered as the father of the entire country, endowed with power. He was to rule justly, care for the well-being of his people, and be an example of high morality, demonstrating virtue. If he grossly violated this sacred order, if he ruled cruelly and unfairly, showing tyranny, then he automatically lost the mandate of heaven, the divinely given right to govern the country, losing the support of the gods. Then the people had every right to revolt against him, and his violent overthrow was considered not a rebellion, but a just restoration of the natural harmony violated by the ruler. Each person in society had their own strictly defined purpose and had to fulfill it. Confucius particularly emphasized 5 main types of relationships that defined the structure of the entire society, ensuring its stability. Ruler and subject. A wise emperor must rule justly, showing concern for his people, and the people must respect him, following his decrees. Father and son, where the father cares for the son, raising him in virtue, and the son lovingly honors the father, showing obedience. The next type of relationship is husband and wife, creating a family. The husband leads the family, making important decisions, and the wife submits to him, supporting him, but he is obliged to protect and care for her, ensuring her well-being. Next comes the elder brother and the younger brother, linked by kinship. The younger brother listens to the elder, showing respect, and the elder cares for the younger, protecting him and helping him. And finally, friends are the only equal relationships, based on mutual respect, support, and trust, not connected by kinship. If each person knew their role in society and fulfilled it correctly, then the world would become stable and harmonious, where everyone is happy. Confucianism highly valued education and knowledge, considering them the key to wisdom. In Chinese culture, the most respected person was always the scholar who devoted their life to knowledge. Confucius taught that the country should be ruled not by those who inherited power, but only by those who proved their wisdom and knowledge, ready to serve the people. Therefore, a complex system of state examinations was introduced in China, which strictly determined who was worthy of holding high positions in the government and who was not. Those wishing to become officials underwent the most difficult tests, requiring immense knowledge and effort. For several long days, they were locked in small, cramped rooms where they had to write complex treatises on morality, state structure, philosophy, and history, demonstrating their knowledge. Only the very best, who showed genius, received the honorable right to serve their state, holding high positions. Even in the 19th century, when power was still passed down by inheritance in many countries, in China, the main rulers became those who could prove their wisdom by passing strict examinations. Confucianism deeply penetrated everyday life, the manner of communication between people, and ancient traditions, defining all aspects of life. Every gesture, every word, even facial expressions, all had their meaning, expressing respect and reverence. When talking to someone older in age or status, one could not look them directly in the eye, as this was considered a sign of disrespect and insolence, showing modesty. When meeting a high-ranking person, one should perform the correct, courteous bow, expressing one's respect. Disputes and discussions had to be conducted calmly and judiciously, without rudeness and shouting, demonstrating self-control. A person who lost control of their emotions was considered a low and unworthy member of society, unable to behave properly. Confucianism created a complex world in which power belonged to the wisest and most educated, not the strongest. It established a strict order and hierarchy, where each person occupied their specific place in society, fulfilling their duties, where the ancient He taught people to follow the natural flow of the world, to trust wise nature, not artificial laws created by humans. Taoism confidently asserted that the universe already exists in perfect harmony, and any clumsy interference by humans only disrupts this delicate balance, leading to disharmony. The main principle of the teaching lay in the concept of wu wei, or non-action, following one's nature. This, of course, did not mean complete inaction in the usual sense of the word, but only suggested that one should not forcibly try to change the world, adjusting it to oneself, and fight the inevitable, wasting energy. One should not try to control what is already moving in the right direction, following the laws of the universe. Water, encountering an unexpected obstacle in its path, simply flows around it without trying to destroy it, preserving its strength. Similarly, a person who has known the Tao should not persist where it is necessary to retreat, showing wisdom, and should not rush headlong, destroying everything around, where one can find another, easier and more harmonious path. If a Confucian saw the ideal world in a rigid hierarchical structure, where everyone occupies their specific place and fulfills their role, then a Taoist saw it in the absence of structure, in the natural fluidity and smooth movement of things, creating harmony. An emperor rules the country? Let him rule, it is his destiny. A wise person who has known the Tao will not interfere in this complex matter, but will only find a way to live so that power does not touch their life, remaining free. An official dictates strict rules? Let them dictate, it is their job. True freedom lies not in strict laws, but in not depending on them, remaining internally free. Taoists often went to high mountains, far from noisy cities, avoided luxurious palaces, and did not seek power because they knew very well that all human achievements are only a fleeting illusion without real value. Empires sooner or later collapse, laws are constantly changing, but bright stars continue to move majestically across the sky, and full-flowing rivers continue to flow steadily to the sea, not asking who rules the world today, not paying attention to human affairs. Unlike Confucian philosophers who dedicated their lives to the careful study of ancient texts, Taoists sincerely believed that true knowledge cannot be expressed in words, it is incomprehensible to the mind. It is not contained in books, it cannot be transmitted through complex teachings, it can only be felt with the heart, intuitively. One who has grasped the Tao will never be able to explain it in words, because any explanation is already a distortion of the truth, a simplification of a complex picture. One of the main sacred texts of Taoism, the wise Tao Te Ching, whose author is considered to be Lao Tzu, begins with the famous phrase, "The Tao that can be expressed in words is not the true Tao," emphasizing its incomprehensibility. Taoism not only denied the necessity of strict laws, but also offered its unique path, which led beyond the boundaries of human life itself to immortality. If Confucianism taught to be a worthy and virtuous person, living in harmony with society, then Taoism asked a more global question. What if it is possible to surpass human nature itself, achieving immortality? Taoists firmly believed that the long path of the Tao is not only a search for harmony with the world, but also a difficult path to immortality, granting eternal life. They believed that if a person learns to live in accordance with natural laws, following the natural course of life, and cleanses their body and mind from harmful influences, achieving purity. If one masters, if a Confucian was strict and steadfastly committed to rules, then a Taoist resembled a wise wanderer contemplating the world with a smile. They laughed at vain human anxieties, floated along the turbulent river of life without trying to change its course, maintaining composure. They knew that everything is temporary in this world, that everything passes, and that is why they felt free from worldly vanity. It was said that Taoist sages could turn into a light breeze, freely walk on white clouds, and disappear beyond the edge of reality, dissolving in nature. But even if these were just colorful legends, their philosophy truly gave a person unparalleled inner freedom, independent of external circumstances. They were not afraid of change, did not cling to earthly riches, and did not obey other people's laws, remaining independent. They were not interested in the complex structure of society, but in the innermost secrets of life itself, ways to prolong it or even go beyond human existence, achieving immortality. They sincerely believed that by comprehending the true nature of the Tao, one could become immortal, gaining eternal life. But what if the long-awaited immortality is not a desired goal, but just another illusion that causes suffering? What if a person has already lived countless lives and will live as many more until they are freed from the endless cycle of rebirths, reaching nirvana? A new, unusual teaching came to Chinese philosophy, Buddhism, which came from distant India. and it brought with it a completely different picture of the universe, different from everything that was known before. Unlike Confucianism, which established strict order on earth, and Taoism, which taught to dissolve in the flow of the universe, Buddhism looked much deeper, exploring the nature of being. Buddhism spoke of the very meaning of existence, of inevitable suffering, of the root causes of human misery, and of the difficult path to long-awaited liberation from suffering, offering hope. It not only offered a coherent philosophy, but also gave real hope of deliverance from torment. If a person lives in suffering, and their world is full of pain and injustice, then this is not a random coincidence, but a natural result of their past actions, committed in this or past lives. According to the teachings of Buddhism, karma is an unshakable law of cause and effect, an invisible force linking the past, present, and future, determining fate. Everything that a person does, every action, even a thought, leaves its indelible mark and creates certain causes that will inevitably manifest in future lives, influencing their destiny. If one acts well, showing kindness and compassion, their next life will be prosperous, filled with joy. If one commits evil, causing suffering to others, agonizing suffering awaits them in future lives, atoning for their guilt. No prayers or generous offerings to the spirits can change this iron law of karma, from which there is no escape. Only the person is fully responsible for their fate, determining their future by their actions in the present. Buddhism brought to Chinese culture the concept of samsara, the endless cycle of births and deaths, the wheel of rebirths. A person dies, but their immortal soul does not disappear without a trace, but continues to live. It reappears in a new body, and so on again and again, going through countless lives until it reaches the long-awaited nirvana, or in other words, complete liberation from suffering and enlightenment, leaving the cycle of rebirths. But not everyone could immediately reach this enlightened state, which requires effort. Most often, people were firmly attached to this world by their strong desires, personal attachments, and agonizing fears, which gave them no rest. These passions and desires pushed them to make mistakes, negatively affected their karma, and again returned them to the world of suffering, continuing the cycle. Even after death, they faced the harsh test of the afterlife judgment, which determined their future fate. In Chinese Buddhism, ideas about the afterlife were intricately intertwined with traditional beliefs about the afterlife, forming a unique alloy. When the soul of a deceased person left the earthly world, freeing itself from the body, it was already awaited by Yan Wang, the formidable lord of hell, and his just judges, ready to pass judgment. They carefully considered all the actions of the deceased, committed during their life, meticulously weighed their good and evil deeds, determining their karma. If a person led a righteous life, following the commandments, they could be reborn in more favorable conditions, rewarded for their virtues. If their soul was burdened with grave sins, they were sent to one of the agonizing underworlds, where they had to atone for their grave deeds, going through suffering. Buddhism did not reject other ancient beliefs deeply rooted in Chinese culture, but skillfully intertwined with them, creating a special and unique form of Chinese religiosity, incorporating the best. It gave ordinary people a firm hope that suffering is not a final sentence, but only a temporary trial that can be overcome with dignity by changing their life. It taught that the world as we know it, with its joys and sorrows, is only a temporary illusion, that everything is constantly changing and no one is bound forever to one existence, being in constant motion. If Confucianism insistently said that a person should take their specific place in the world, fulfilling their duty, and Taoism taught to go with the flow, not resisting, then Buddhism offered something more, to go beyond existence itself, to free oneself from the agonizing cycle of rebirths and reach the blissful state of nirvana in which there is no more pain, no suffering, and no time itself. We have already seen in detail how the complex world of Chinese beliefs gradually formed, incorporating elements of various teachings. We talked about the majestic gods and the strict hierarchy of the heavenly palace, where everything is subject to order. We analyzed the main philosophical teachings that determine not only religious ideas, but also the very life of people, influencing their behavior. Chinese mythology is full of instructive legends about heroes, ordinary people who changed the world with the strength of their spirit, tamed the raging elements, and even dared to challenge the almighty gods. Their great deeds determined what China became in the end, and how numerous descendants saw it, proud of them. In the distant past, when the world was not yet inhabited by people, when rivers flowed wherever they wanted, not subject to human will, and high mountains arose by themselves, China suffered from a terrible great flood, sowing death and destruction. Water flowed uncontrollably from its banks, flooded fertile villages, eroded fields, and washed away roads, depriving people of their livelihoods. The entire vast country was turning into a vast, endless sea, and no one could tame the raging element, stop it. People perished from terrible hunger, wild animals in panic left their native lands, and the torrential rain poured continuously, as if huge heavenly gates had opened forever, releasing torrents of water. The first to bravely attempt to tackle this terrible calamity was Gun, father of the wise Yu. He constructed towering dikes, created sturdy barriers, but the furious water was far stronger, destroying all his works. It effortlessly shattered the flimsy walls, found weak points, and ruthlessly demolished everything people had worked so hard to build, nullifying their efforts. For 10 long years, Gun stubbornly battled the river, displaying heroism, but failed to conquer it, to stop the flood. Then the angered emperor, losing hope, ordered him executed for his failures and entrusted the difficult task of taming the flood to his wise son, Yu. Yu, being a clever man, did not repeat his father's fatal mistakes. He immediately understood that brute force could not restrain the water. It needed to be wisely guided into the right channels, following its nature. Instead of building useless barriers that would inevitably be destroyed, he began meticulously digging deep canals, skillfully laying out new riverbeds, creating a complex natural system of water diversion so that it would no longer flood the fields. He tirelessly traveled throughout vast China, studying his native land, carefully observing the rivers, their character. He sought effective ways to subdue them, not with force, but with reason, following natural laws. She gave him a magical potion that could lift him to the heavens and grant him immortality. But he did not drink it immediately, showing nobility. He wanted to share it equally with his beloved wife, Chang'e, so that they could attain eternal life together. One day, when he was not home, the curious Chang'e accidentally saw the elixir of immortality and remembered that her brave husband was doomed to inevitable old age and death, and yielding to temptation, she took it herself without his knowledge. Legend has it that she immediately ascended to the heavens, but not to a majestic throne of the gods, as he had dreamed. Instead, by fate's decree, she became a sad resident of the moon, forever lonely and forever separated from her beloved land and husband. Hu Yi lost everything that was dear to him. He bravely saved the world from destruction, but failed to save himself from death. His name became a legend, passed down from generation to generation, but he remained a simple mortal exile among people, receiving no reward. His tragic story is an important warning that even the greatest hero, having accomplished a feat, can become a ruthless victim of his own decisions, paying a high price. Another, no less interesting legend tells us about 8 unusual sages possessed of supernatural powers. They wandered the boundless world, laughing at its foolish rules and conventions, casually drinking fragrant wine with the gods themselves, easily rising to the high heavens and returning back to earth whenever they pleased, performing miracles. They were respectfully called the 8 Immortals, praising their wisdom. 8 extraordinary Taoist sages who were able to grasp the complex secret of eternal life, bypassing death. Each of them came to the long-awaited immortality in their own unique way, unlike others, demonstrating strength of spirit. They were completely unconcerned with the strict laws of ordinary people living in ignorance. They knew that this world was just a fascinating game, and they learned to play it better than anyone else, subjugating reality to themselves. Lu Dongbin was a brave warrior, a skilled swordsman, and a clever man who was confidently predicted to have a brilliant career at the imperial court, promising wealth and fame. He passionately dreamed of resounding fame and great battles, glorifying his name. But one day, utterly exhausted, he fell asleep in a simple tavern and saw an amazing dream that changed his life. In this realistic dream, he lived a long and eventful life, full of experiences. He became a high-ranking official, acquired immense wealth, and raised a large family, as he had dreamed. Many years passed, and suddenly he was betrayed by loved ones who took everything away. His successful career collapsed overnight. His property was seized by envious people, and he lost everything he had. He slowly grew old in complete solitude and died forgotten by all, unwanted by anyone, experiencing bitterness. Waking up in a cold sweat, he immediately realized that it was all just an illusion, a delusion. Worldly success, fame, and wealth are just a mirage that sooner or later disappears, leaving only emptiness. Then, without regret, he left his former life, giving up his career, and went on a long journey where he met a wise, immortal mentor who opened the path to the Tao for him. Thus, Lu Dongbin attained long-awaited immortality not in military glory, but in complete renunciation of it, gaining freedom. Once, Li Tieguai was a great and respected sage, whose body was strong and healthy, and his face handsome and noble. One day, he decided to send his immortal soul on a distant astral journey, leaving his body for several long days in order to learn the secrets of the world. But when he, full of knowledge, returned, his body had already burned down in an accident, and he found himself in a terrible situation. Lan Kai-He was the most eccentric and strange of the 8 immortals, differing from the others in their behavior. He wore torn and dirty clothes, always went barefoot, sang strange songs in the streets, and often pretended to be insane in order to divert attention from his power. He walked among ordinary people, but never belonged to them, not sharing their values. When he was sympathetically given money, he could immediately throw it into the nearest river or give it to needy beggars, not caring about wealth. He could laugh loudly, looking at rich and arrogant people, knowing perfectly well that their gold and power were just temporary dust of no importance. He never bothered to explain his strange actions, but one day, in front of an astonished crowd, he suddenly sang a new, beautiful song and soared high into the sky, forever disappearing into the fluffy clouds, leaving a memory of himself. Cao Guoju was a noble aristocrat, the brother of the Empress herself, who had absolutely everything one could dream of, but it did not please him. But one day, he saw with his own eyes how dirty and hypocritical court life was, how much betrayal, greed, and blind hatred there was, poisoning people's souls. Disappointed, he left the luxurious palace with disgust, put on simple peasant clothes, and became a poor wanderer seeking the meaning of life. He searched long and unsuccessfully for the truth, until he accidentally met other enlightened immortals who opened his eyes and showed him that wealth and power were just a fleeting illusion, and that true power lies in complete freedom from earthly attachments. Up to this point, we have spoken in detail about ancient myths that have been passed down from generation to generation, shaping people's ideas about the structure of the world and explaining how the complex universe, full of wonders, is arranged. But now we move on to a completely different story, not related to myths. This is not an ancient myth or an old legend rooted in the mists of time, but a fascinating book, a great literary epic of China, based on Buddhist and Taoist views of the world, but artfully created by the pen of a talented writer with a rich imagination. The book, with the intriguing title Journey to the West, became popular. It was created in the 16th century by the famous writer Cheng and immediately won the love of readers. The book tells of the incredible pilgrimage of a Buddhist monk named Xuanzang to distant India for sacred sutras in order to bring them to China. But, as often happens, the main and most striking character in a fascinating story becomes not the one who diligently follows the path, fulfilling a mission, but the one who tirelessly creates chaos around himself, disrupting order. And such a hero here is the restless Sun Wukong, the legendary Monkey King endowed with supernatural power and intelligence. A being that repeatedly, deliberately violated all established rules, destroyed boundaries, ridiculed self-satisfied gods, and defiantly challenged the heavens themselves, not recognizing authorities. Although Journey to the West is a literary novel, the image of the Monkey King has absorbed ancient Chinese ideas about the very nature of a rebel, about the unquenchable search for immortality, about the unequal struggle with omnipotent gods, and about the severe punishment for excessive pride, knocking one off the path. This is a fascinating story of a hero who suddenly received incredible power, but had absolutely no idea what to do with it, unable to control it. He defiantly challenged the very universe, not understanding the consequences. Then the concerned heavenly emperor summoned the Buddha himself, the only being in the entire universe who, it was believed, could stop the impudent monkey, curbing its power. The Buddha, unlike the other gods, did not use weapons or call on numerous armies for help, relying on wisdom. He simply calmly extended his hand and said to Sun Wukong, "You consider yourself great and omnipotent, but if you are so strong, prove it. Try to get beyond my humble palm." The self-confident Sun Wukong, confident that this was another simple trick, easily succumbed to the provocation and with one powerful jump crossed the vast heavens, leaving the Buddha's palm. He flew quickly through white clouds, past bright stars, and to the very limits of the boundless universe, encountering no obstacles, enjoying the flight until he reached 5 huge columns rising high. He naively thought that these were the borders of the world and decided to mark his triumph, leaving a frivolous sign of his presence, and then, content and proud of himself, triumphantly returned back. But when he landed on the ground, he was amazed to see that all this time he had been on the very same palm of the Buddha, not having flown anywhere. The huge 5 columns were just his fingers, waiting for him. At that moment, the Buddha, without saying a word, quickly closed his palm and then miraculously turned it into a huge, impregnable stone mountain consisting of 5 high peaks under which the daring monkey was securely sealed for 500 long years as punishment. His noisy rebellion was suppressed by wisdom, and his immense physical strength proved completely powerless before spiritual power. But the amazing story does not end there at all. It only begins, because one day, when the Buddha himself needed a worthy protector for the humble monk Xuanzang, who was to go to distant India for sacred sutras, he remembered the monkey, and it was freed. But now he was not the same as before, arrogant and self-confident. He was destined to embark on a long journey, to learn humility, patience, compassion, and the understanding that immense power is not merely the ability to destroy everything around him, but also an enormous responsibility, a duty to protect the weak. Thus began his incredible new journey to the West, a path of redemption for past sins, one that would transform a brazen rebel into a true hero, a protector of good. The story of the Monkey King is an instructive tale of an indomitable spirit, one that boldly defies all that exists, the story of someone who recognized no boundaries and feared not even the almighty gods. But it is also a poignant story of how even the greatest power means nothing without a profound understanding of one's own purpose in this world, without wisdom and humility. We have traveled a long and fascinating road through the myths and legends of ancient China, acquainting ourselves with its culture. These are not merely interesting tales of a distant past, they are a vivid reflection of the Chinese perspective on the world.